little bit different setup, as all you can tell, but I like it, so it will stay that way from now on. In a previous video, I talked about one of my favorite comedy genres of all time, which is surreal humor. In this video, I'll be talking about another one of my favorite comedy genres of all time, which is anti-humor. Anti-humor is a type of indirect humor that involves the joke teller delivering something which is intentionally not funny or lacking in intruistic meaning. The practice relies on the expectation on the part of the audience of something humorous, and when this does not happen, the irony itself is of comedic value. Anti-humor is also the basis of various types of pranks and hoaxes. The humor of such jokes is based on the surprise factor of absence of an expected joke or of a punchline in a narration which is set up as a joke. An anticlimax is objective to anti-humor. Early examples of anti-humor can be found in the Shaggy Dog story, which involves telling an extremely long joke with an intricate and sometimes horribly grisly backstory and surreal or repetitive plotline before ending the story with either a weak spoonerism or abruptly stopping with no punchline at all. For example, did you hear about the honeymooners who confused a tub of KY Jello with wooden putty? Quite the tragedy. All the windows fell out of their new home. One more type of anti-humor is found in the joke "No Soap Radio." That joke is meant to have no punchline. When someone tells a joke, it is most likely with their friend, and it is meant to confuse others who don't know that there isn't supposed to be a joke. Though the one comedian, or should I say non-comedian, that laid the groundwork for anti-humor and even is considered the godfather of anti-humor is a man by the name of Andy Kaufman. During the 1970s, the stand-up comedy format was very conventional and had some overused tropes. Today's stand-up is not too much different either. Of course, you had in the early 70s George Carlin and Richard Pryor, and in the late 70s you had Steve Martin, all providing a unique, original, and very funny stand-up, but one comic was completely different from them, and that was Andy Kaufman. Kaufman's style of humor emerged as a counter to the mainstream comedy of that time, and his style was mostly used to make fun of all the unoriginal and overused tropes of stand-up at that time as well. This is when Kaufman's anti-humor emerged. You could say that anti-humor came into being from a reactionary standpoint due to the fact that it was used to mock and make fun of most of the comedic establishment of that time and continue to mock the comedic establishment to this day as well. You could even say that Kaufman's brand of humor was to make fun of the entertainment industry overall instead of just the comedy establishment, but I digress. Some of Kaufman's stunts include curling up in a sleeping bag and falling asleep in the middle of a set, arranging to have all the Carnegie Hall chauffeured out for milk and cookies after one of his shows, read pages of The Great Gatsby until he had cleared the room, and in one of his most legendary moments, he organized a heckling just so that he could fuck with the audience. He even had an alter ego by the name of Tony Clifton that was a parody of hacky sexist lounge singers. By doing all this, Kaufman influenced half of today's modern comedy with his unique and alternative way of doing comedy. Now, let's move on to Kaufman's successors that continued his legacy in their own unique way with their own brand of anti-humor. Norm Macdonald is a great successor to Kaufman, even though his brand of humor, particularly his anti-humor, is not as crazy as Kaufman's, but very good nonetheless. Norm has stated before that he doesn't consider himself an anti-comedian or a meta-comedian, but he definitely has done anti-humor quite a lot. Two of Norm's most memorable moments have him doing anti-humor. The first one was a moth joke that he did on a late night show with Conan O'Brien, and the other time was when he pretty much did an anti-roast at the Bob Saget roast. Moving on from Norm, we have Vernon Chapman and John Lee from the art collective PFFR. These two, who are pretty big fans of Kaufman, have been weirding out primetime television with their anti-humor that has a heavy mix of surreal, satirical, and dark humor in it. One of the first most weirdest, chaotic moments in their television careers has a lot of anti-humor in it appeared on their MTV2 cult hit sketch show Wonder Shows, in which in the season 1 finale episode titled Patience, they fucked with people on the streets of New York City for 8 minutes and then announced that was all just nonsense, so they played that whole 8 minutes backwards so that they can redo the whole episode all over again. That is one of the most greatest pieces of trolling that I have ever seen on television. Ever. Tim Heidecker and Eric Wareheim come from the Tim and Eric duo, are another great successor to Kaufman, with Tim stating that him and Eric come from the Andy Kaufman school of doing comedy. Tim has stated in response to a question of how he developed his own brand of anti-humor, my friend Doug Lussenhope, he used to run kind of a comedy at this dive bar, but there used to be 1 or 2 people every night that would come up and do their act, and it was just never good. They weren't funny, and they seemed to be using it as a stepping stone. It wasn't coming from a genuine place, so I started doing it as a response to that, and became a fun character to do. Much like our guys from PFFR, Tim and Eric have been weirding out primetime television since the mid-2000s. One of their most famous shows is the sketch show Tim and Eric Awesome Show Great Job, in which the show featured anti-humor, cringe humor, surreal humor, parody, and often at times satirical humor, public access television style musical acts, bizarre Fox commercials with a unique editing and special effects style by Doug Lussenhope to make the show appear camp. A comedian who's good friends with Tim by the name of Greg Turkington has a alter ego by the name of Neil Hamburger, which belongs in the anti-humor universe. Neil Hamburger character is a Tony Clifton influenced character, which is very apparent with the character's abrasive on-stage persona. He's the product of a has-been career and a life that has never was the quintessential washed-up stand-up. Eric Andre, who is another great successor to Kaufman. Eric's energy and weirdness while performing rivals Kaufman's weirdness. Eric is the host of the Eric Andre Show, which is a parody talk show that has a lot of anti-humor, cringe humor, dark humor, and improv in it. Eric, along with his co-host Amble Burris, they torture guests in some segments of the show, while in other segments he is doing weird skits in the streets of New York. One of my favorite lines in the show is an anti-joke that has Eric saying, "I'm going to wait to lose my virginity until I get divorced." Well, I'm all done talking about this subject right now. I can't wait to see some more anti-humor in the future from future funny men and women with their own style of anti-humor. It's gonna be great. If you like this video, make sure you like this video, share this video, subscribe to this channel, and subscribe to this channel. Have a awesome day, and see you all next time, guys. Take care.